Hi everyone, I'm here at the English Institute of Sport in Sheffield where my good friend Steve Cooper is going to talk to us about strength and conditioning for my bike ride. Joined with Gary as well, who you all know. So we're just going to have a general chat about how we can make me as physically strong and conditioned as possible and talk about my weedy cyclist upper body. So I'll get you guys to just do a quick introduction, so fire away.
I'm Steve Cooper, I'm a strength and conditioning coach and I specialise in working with Paralympic athletes.
And I'm Gary Dawson, I work for the Spinal Injuries Association as support network manager. I have a T6 complete spinal cord injury and I'm a long-term hand cyclist, and this will be taking part in my 12th overseas cycle for the SIA.
Amazing. Right, so let's start with hand cycling. I think I mentioned this to you shortly after last year's ride, Gary, that I was going to do it. Your response was, well, someone says it every year, so I don't really believe you. And now I have a hand bike and I'm in full flow of training. What are your initial thoughts about me doing it?
Massively impressed, if I'm completely honest. I think that I see every single year people will jump in my bike, they'll have a go, they'll go, this is great. I'd love the challenge of being able to try and do this. But no one has ever actually committed to it. And when you message to say, I'm actively searching for a bike, I'm now bought a bike, I've now been out on it, it's like, wow, this guy is serious. And again, my initial thoughts were, I'm not sure you're completely mentally prepared for it, but absolutely incredible that you've taken this challenge on and you're running with it. And yeah, my hat's off to you, because I think most people who go out cycling on a regular basis, they love the freedom, they love the exercise, but using the power of your legs versus the again, unfortunately, the usual upper body of your average cyclist is quite significantly different to their lower body. Yeah, my first thoughts was, oh my God, is he going to be able to do this and survive it? But even if he doesn't, what an amazing challenge to take on.
Yeah, I think we'll touch on the mental side of it as well, because it is quite daunting. But Coops, what do you think about me taking on this challenge?
It's a big ask. I think you're very brave. I think you're doing a great thing for a great cause. But yeah, it's a big physical ask on the body. Like I say, if someone such as yourself who wouldn't have invested the hours and days that someone might have needed to build the upper body to tolerate something like this, the biggest risk for you in something like this is always going to be the body doesn't tend to like novelty. So if you give it lots of something brand new to do without adequate time to recover, that's when it tends to struggle and break down. So always the challenge is going to how you build into it slowly and don't go out the gates too quickly with your training. So by the time you actually get to the ride, you've still got various parts of your body that are where they're supposed to be and aren't hurting the entire time.
Yeah. I think what am I putting myself into? Like, what can I expect, Gary, from a day out hand cycling? What kind of, I don't know, injuries or aches and pains? What do you generally get?
I think the initial strain on your shoulders, your elbows and your wrists are going to be something you're just not going to be used to. This because it's a constant repetitive motion that you're going through. It really puts your tendons through it. And building up to, you're probably going to start with a 30-minute ride, hour-long ride, maybe going out for 2 or 3 hours. When you're on the actual overseas ride and you're doing 20 miles within a 15 to 20 minute break, and then 20 miles and this is over 3 days, when you wake up on that second day and your arms are just completely stiff and everything's tight and everything's inflamed, that's when the real challenge starts, getting back in the bike on that second day and just going, oh, this hurts, and whilst your body then warms up again. But yeah, they're the initial strains that you'll be going through.
That's okay. I mean, I'm accustomed to that feeling, but in my legs. I've done multi-day cycling, so I know what day 2, day 3 feels like from that perspective. But obviously, as you've already mentioned, a cyclist's upper body isn't meant for propelling yourself along.
I will add something to that then. You use your arms for everything. So even though your legs will be tired after a long day cycling and you're obviously walking around, it's the little things that you'll be doing. So when you pick up your pint at the end of the day, that action is you're just back in the bike. So it's surprising how much just having a drink or then eating your meal, turning yourself over in bed at night, brushing your teeth, all of a sudden your arms are still dead and you're still struggling.
That's a great point. That hasn't actually crossed my mind to this point, where actually at the end of the day, I'm not done with my arms. No. Yeah, long day cycling, I sit down and give my legs a rest. Long day of hand cycling, I've still got to feed myself. Great. Maybe I won't gel my hair, so I'll just miss out a few things like that. Coops, what do I need to do to survive?
To survive? Well, to add to Gary's point there, I think that the thing you got that's probably more fortunate on your behalf is that, so obviously for Gary to have stiff and sore arms, he then needs to use those to propel himself around in his chair, to get about, to transfer in and out, all those sort of things. So you'll be able to create a few shortcuts there, thankfully. So you won't have the tolerance that Gary will have for all of those activities of the years spent. You will be able to shortcut a few things, which will be helpful for you. But what do you need to be able to do to prepare? So the most important thing, like we mentioned before, is that you build slowly into doing this. You give your body adequate time to go to adjust to the new thing you're asking it to do. Generally, we find with athletes the biggest challenge they come across is doing too much too soon, not allowing adequate recovery periods to allow your body to adapt. Your body can do basically anything you want it to do if you give it time to adapt to it. If you give it too much too soon, that's when it breaks down. The next layer of that is that you'll have weaknesses within your body that will be more at risk than others. So if we all went and did the same thing, we might all get sore, but we might all get sore somewhere slightly different. So for you to be aware of, as you're building into those first few sessions and first few weeks of training, as you're building through up to where you are now, probably to start going, well, this is the bit I'm really struggling with, or I'm getting really sore here or there or wherever it might be. And then that might give you a few clues about the areas you need to go away and work on to protect those bits. Like Gary says, your shoulders are probably going to be the biggest risk, and they're going to go through a lot of load. But also you've got to consider how that impacts your trunk, how it impacts the rest of your body, because you might find yourself fixing with your legs really hard in a certain position, and then you end up with cramp or whatever it might be from those bits. So we're picking up where are you struggling, and where are you tending to be on the verge of breaking down, and what might we need to be able to do to support that. And one of the challenges definitely going to come across is, are your shoulders going to be ready for it? Are they strong enough? But also, do they have the right range of motion to be able to get you through that action time and time again? If there's something that's a bit too tight there, and every time you're giving it little pull, you're doing that for hours on end, you're going to end up with some serious bother at some point. So it's all those elements we need to make sure are weighed up against each other, and you're on top of things as soon as they start to maybe niggle you a little bit.
Pretty good. I think I've probably started off well then, because I'm a month into training, and through my own research and reading up on doing something new, doing something novel, all of the things I've read has said you want to get your joints and tendons used to the motion first, and then worry about your muscles backing that up. So the past month, so this is kind of where the mental side of it comes in a little bit, I felt like I haven't really done any solid training because it hasn't been overly taxing as far as my CV system is concerned. When I'm on the handbike for half an hour, 40 minutes, my heart rate goes 80 to 90 beats per minute. So it's very leisurely as far as my engine is concerned. And I almost get bored because I'm just sat there rotating my arms around, and that feels like a lifetime. As where when I'm on my bike and I'm pushing my legs quite hard, that time goes by quicker because I'm working out. I'm not just sat there doing nothing. So I think I've put some good foundation in the first 5-6 weeks. Maybe we'll see how that looks later on.
And when we think about conditioning, you want to think about the two different elements, right? You've got what we call your central factors. So that is your heart and your lungs, your ability to get oxygen around the body. So that for you will probably be really good, because you get that from any kind of aerobic exercise. So all the cycling you've done will probably mean that your heart is enlarged and your blood volume is higher and all those sorts of things. So your body is ready to carry oxygen around. The bit that you'll struggle with is those peripheral factors, so the ability of the muscles themselves to utilise that oxygen and transfer it to the action you're asking it to do. So that'll be the thing that you'll need to build into slowly, and over time will change. So your body can go, I can get the oxygen there, no worries. But with the muscle's ability to use that, and that's going to come with duration of exposure and time you spend doing that hand cycling action as opposed to so maintaining, which I'm sure you are doing, maintaining an element of your standard cycling is probably also quite helpful to make sure that you're not detraining some of those bits as you're just focusing on using the arms and the hand cycling.
Yeah, big focus. I don't want to lose my cycling fitness. So my week, I back to back my training with cycling and hand cycling. So because my hand cycling sessions are quite short, I did my first 1 hour session on the weekend.
Nice.
And I've built up to that from 20, 30, 40 minute sessions. So yeah, losing cycling fitness was always a concern as a keen cyclist. So I'm hoping to maintain. I'm not doing anything else with that. Cool. Should we talk about how that training would look different for Gary or for anyone who has an SCI versus me who's just taken on the challenge for awareness? I'm choosing to sit in a handbike. That's the only option for those people who've suffered an SCI. So how would training differ for Gary as it will for me?
So there's elements of training that would be different, the elements of probably setup of the bike that would be different, and there's obviously risks involved in it are different. I think, like we talked about a minute ago, the big challenge is, so if you touch wood, if you were to pick up an injury during this process in your shoulder, for example, that would be detrimental and unhelpful, and you'll probably be a bit sore and whatever else. If Gary was to pick up an injury with his shoulder through this process, that the knock-on effect that has on the rest of his life, because his use of his arms to get around and to move in and out of his chair and whatever else is pretty catastrophic. So you, in some ways, have got a bit more leeway with some of the stuff to maybe push some boundaries a little bit. That sometimes people in chairs aren't afforded because of the challenge of getting around and using the fact that your arms are used for everything all of the time. So that's definitely one of the risks, or one of the challenges for someone like Gary in this process. He's got to be a lot more careful because of the ramifications of some of those choices that could lead to. We talked earlier about the use of your core. So for you can use your legs and you can use the lower part of your core to brace. For Gary, the T6 complete, we've probably got a very limited function from kind of mid chest down. So that means that there'll be a lot of areas of the body that are uncontrolled. So I imagine Gary's bike setup has a bit more stability that will be kind of built in for him. And often what we'll do with guys in the gym with similar impairments to Gary, we'll provide that stability for them. So we'll use, whether that's strapping, whether that's a certain type of seat or a certain type of bench, to provide stability over areas. Because the classic joke people make in S&C is, oh, you can't get strong squatting on a BOSU ball. You see those videos on people like that, they're standing there wobbling around everywhere. It's really hard to get strong in an unstable environment, because you can't produce high levels of force where there's no stability. So that example carries across really clearly to someone with a spinal cord injury. If you don't put them in a stable environment, they're not going to get strong. If they can't produce stability themselves, it's how do you help them to find that stability, and that whether that's through trapping or through setups or whatever it might be. So that's a big difference, and you can cheat, you can cut a lot of corners that aren't afforded to Gary, unfortunately, because you can create that stability yourself.
I've actually removed a load of straps from the bike. There were straps on the seat itself, and there were straps for my legs. I don't need those. So what do you do on your bike, Gary? Are you fully strapped in like that?
I am completely strapped in, and again, it's about that stability. Everything you were saying then, it was just like these things popping off in my brain going, yes, I can relate to all of this, because I've got no core at all. And not having that stability if I'm in the gym, if I'm on a ski erg machine, whatever it is, and I'm wobbling all over the place, it's still quite difficult. And I do have a shoulder injury that I'm always nursing. But just come back to the straps. So my feet are strapped in. The biggest risk for me is that I hit something, one of my foot bounces out. If it hits the floor, it's going to go behind me. If I'm going along at 30, maybe 40 mile an hour, can't stop that, so they have to be strapped in. Then I have a strap that goes across my hips, which again anchors me in. Then I have another one which just sort of sits across my abdomen, which actually helps me with my breathing as well, because it puts a little bit more pressure onto my diaphragm, because that part of my diaphragm's paralysed as well. And that really gives me a little bit more stability when it comes to really putting power through the cranks, because there is nothing worse. And when you're cycling along and you see the hill and you see all the cyclists ahead of you stand up on their pedals, and you just say, I can't put my weight through this. This is just all shoulders, chest and arms that have now got to get me up this hill. But the strapping does help in those situations.
What does your training currently look like? What do you do to get overseas ride ready?
So the foundation of my training is beyond the physical. So for me to be able to take on a challenge like this, I have to make sure that my diet is bang on, and not only because I need to drop excess fat and build muscle, but to help me manage my bowels. Having a spinal injury means I have double incontinence, and if I don't have a good bowel management routine, then I can't go out and do this at all. So it all starts with the foundations of spinal cord injury. And once all that's sort of managed and monitored and is as best as it can be, that's when going to the gym on a regular basis, and I'm someone who does things to excess. So as you described, when people first start training, they just do as much as they can, then they can't move for a week. I've been guilty of that in the past. So yesterday I went to the gym twice. I was there at sort of 7 in the morning, I was there at 7 o'clock at night. I use the ski erg a lot because it's quite fluid motion. Again, I'm struggling with the shoulder injury, so certain pressure going through lateral raises is quite difficult. Using a handbike on various different resistances. I vary my times, do a lot of HIIT training versus a lot of endurance and stamina building. And then I do free weights. A lot of the machines aren't particularly accessible because I'm just in my local leisure centre and I'm there on my own. It's not necessarily I've got a great coach with me who can sort of hold me, pass me the weights when I'm strapped onto a bench or something. But it is that regular, consistent training. My biggest thing that I have to focus on is my rest days and my sleep, because I'm not the best at sleeping and I'm not the best at sitting around doing nothing, and rest and recuperation is so important. Otherwise you're just constantly working strained muscles, and that becomes a bit of a detriment to me.
I think it will be something we will probably have another in-depth conversation around, but there are plenty of barriers in the way for you that I would never have had to think about. So like you said, bowel management. I go out riding and in all honesty, if I need to go to the toilet, I might go in a bush on a long ride, or there's a coffee stop and I can just jump into whatever toilet is available and that's fine. So for me, nutrition is a factor, but not that I need to control my intake because I need to worry about my output. I worry about my intake because I just want to make sure I've got enough carbs in my body. What are generally the top barriers or considerations for you that you think that people just really don't think about or consider?
From people outside the SCI world, and that's outside of like the legal people and professionals that we work with as well, they just see the physical impairments. Oh, you can't walk, your legs don't work. Again, when people look at me, oh, you're paralysed from the waist down. No, I'm paralysed from the chest down. Not having that core is it's the invisible part of it, but it's quite significant. And then all the bodily function management, I say the diet requirements on these rides. There's a lot of gels that you take. That's going to have massive implications as well. And then one of the biggest challenges that I face as well is when I get to the end of each section or each day, it's not just, oh, we're there and get back into my chair. The transfer, I have to have help for all of it. So I can't move my legs. Someone has to unstrap my legs and get them out. These days, unfortunately, I do have to have a bit more assistance getting from the bike back into my chair because it's effectively a floor to chair transfer, and your arms are completely dead at that point. And then after all that, and they say we all go off to the pub, we have some food, we might go retire to our beds at 11, 12 o'clock. I then might be doing bowel management for the next 2 hours. I might not be going to bed till 2 and then we're up again at 6. That's the side of things that people will never see, and it's always the biggest challenge. So you're always facing like additional fatigue, and but it can be done. And I say this is my 12th ride, and I absolutely love these rides. And getting it all right means that I can continue doing these rides as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think part of the awareness that I'm trying to raise isn't just about getting people who aren't in that SCI life to understand what you go through, but people who do have an SCI who think it is unattainable because of all of those things that they have to manage separately, getting them to realise that actually people like yourself are doing it and it is manageable. Yes, it takes more work, but if you're willing to put that work in, it's not insurmountable. And how enjoyable is the overseas ride? It's amazing.
They are amazing, and I say I have my full use of my upper limbs, my arms, my hands, nothing's affected by my spinal cord injury. It's just my 2/3 of my body. We've had people do it with a C5 complete injury who had no hand function, so their hands are strapped onto their handbike, and it's a power assist handbike that's attached to the front of their chair. And because of his impairment, and we was in Romania, the roads were quite cambered. He couldn't sit in the camber because he couldn't control it. So we just sat right in the middle of the road, and we just spent 3 days shouting, "There's a car coming!" And he's like, "What can I do? They'll go around me." But he had the most amazing time, you know, and he brought his carer with him, and it was fantastic. And that was so incredible to be part of, to have these conversations as you're cycling hundreds of miles across sort of European countryside, and seeing what is happening again alongside the professionals who are there, the non-disabled cyclists, and you're hearing their stories and how this is affecting their or improving their mental health, and how they use cycling as their escape. You know, I'm such a massive advocate for sport, and when sport is done in a way that is safe, and you know, this is why I think strength and conditioning is so important, because it means that you can prolong your quality of life. And especially when you got a spinal cord injury, because I say the first thing that when I was discharged from hospital, they said to me, look after your skin and don't put on weight. They're the two things that are going to massively impair your life if they go wrong. And I, you know, again, touch wood, nearly 23 years of my injury, never had a pressure ulcer, and I maintained a level of fitness. I might not, it's going to last forever, but it is doing having these challenges in my diary. It means that I'm constantly focused on, one, having a great time when we're there, because we do, it is fantastic, but two, giving me this quality of life.
Yeah, because it's interesting you mentioned there, because that's definitely one of the other challenges that people with spinal cord injuries will face compared to someone like you might. If you're a bit uncomfortable in your position on the bike, you can feel that for a start, and you can adjust your position to accommodate it. Gary won't be able to feel that. So if all of a sudden he ends up with a pressure over a particular point of skin, you can end up with a pressure sore, which can be then really, really detrimental to life. So that can be a real challenge. Again, one of the things you'll just never have to consider.
No.
Because you just go, oh, it's all right, wiggle this way a bit. But that option just isn't available to some people, and therefore it can be a real risk.
When I did my very first overseas ride, London to Paris, the bike that I used was just one that I picked up the day before. I've never been on one before. And where my feet sat in the stirrups, every time I turned, it would just rubbed against my calf. I couldn't feel it, but I was getting headaches. There was signs that my body was uncomfortable. I got to the end of the day, and there was a huge hole in my leg, and it was like, oh, now what do I do? We just taped it up. Look, it was on the front of my leg, and it wasn't in a place that was going to impair me from sitting or progress something worse. But no idea. Spent 80 miles cycling. Every time I turned, just this little bit of metal cutting into my leg.
It's the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? It's a tiny, tiny thing, but you don't realise it's happening, and it's happening repetitively. Because of course, pressure sores are a serious thing, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah.
If you don't know what they are, you think, oh, it's just a bit of a sore on your skin, but they can get infected. They can become a serious health issue.
You can die from them.
Yeah.
It used to be one of the biggest killers of people with spinal cord injury. If it gets into your bones, if you get osteomyelitis, and then you can get sepsis, you will die. And the thing with pressure ulcer treatment in non-disabled people is get them up, get them moving. If you have a spinal injury, it's bed rest till it's healed, and that could be weeks, months, years. It's one of my biggest fears. I think it's one of the biggest fears of most of the SIA community.
I'm going to go back a bit, and this is more out of me being a bit more of a geek about things rather than it being of interest to this conversation. But we talked about nutrition and fueling. When I fuel for a bike ride, I've got my legs powering me, which take up a lot of energy. So I measure my intake by grams of carbs per hour. What's the difference with my arms? My arms aren't producing that much power. How does someone who is powering themselves with just their arms, much smaller muscles, much lower power output, what's the fueling strategy for that?
Great question, and that's one of the joys of Paralympic sport, is that some of these things we just don't know, right? There'll be experts that will be in sports like triathlon and cycling that will probably have some of the answers to those questions, and I might be able to put you in touch with some. We can track them down for a chat, but that is one of the challenges, right? Like if you go and look at able-bodied cycling, wanted to cycle this far, and there'll be reams and reams of research and information that you could lean on to find all that information and to work out how to develop your strategy. One of the challenges we face when we work in Paralympic sport is that depth of research just isn't available for us to work on, so we end up doing in-house projects or kind of trialling things for individuals to work out what best fits them. So that's definitely one of the challenges you're going to have to face, is that aren't the answer. You might not have the answer to that question, and the answer may well be that you need to explore that and try and work out what it means for you. And we consider people with spinal cord injuries one of the biggest drivers, obviously, of calorie usage or energy usage is the amount of muscle mass that you have available to you. So for someone, your example there with someone with a really high spinal cord injury versus a lower spinal cord injury, again, their intake is going to be completely different. But you can't lump them in and say, they're just, if it's hand cycling, it's this, because it will vary massively depending on muscle mass available and how they're powering that bike. So the honest answer is it's hard to work out, and I probably don't know it off the top of my head. But there's still going to be a massive element or a massive need to drive a fueling strategy to make sure that you're appropriately.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I'm just going to go at it with my cycling fueling strategy, which is way over the top. But I don't know, I'll just be well fed, I guess.
And when the other side you've got to consider in this is you'll cycle the same distance that you would have cycled powering it with your legs, powering it with your arms. So it's going to take you a lot longer to do it. So your fueling strategy probably needs to take into consideration duration, maybe more so than intensity of action.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a really interesting question though, because I've often looked for this kind of information, things like calorie counters. I know there's lots of sort of misconceptions around them about are they accurate or not, but they're all based around people who are able-bodied, whereas I am just using a third of my body and doing, say, similar lengths of distances, and I'm generally going at a similar speed to a lot of the cyclists, not the front pack, obviously, more mid to back of the pack. But what would be my average calorie intake, or what would be my, what power am I burning? It's something that I say there's just no readily available information, because that research unfortunately is just not being done, and because especially with spinal cord injury, it's such a spectrum. There's you can't just say paraplegics to this or tetraplegics to this, or if you've got spina bifida or cerebral palsy, it's all going to be so unique. So even if they ever do that information, it's still going to be based around that one individual that's done on that time.
So we're going to jump in the gym, and you're going to give us some pointers. What are we going to do?
So there'll be some key bits and bobs we want to try and go through. Like you said at the start, the key thing in this for you, yes, being a bit stronger would probably help you. The thing that's going to allow you to complete the challenge more than anything else is be able to deliver consistent training without breaking down. So are we looking for absolute max force output on this, that, or the other? Probably not. You'll develop a little bit as you go through the process anyway. The key thing is, can we put your body in a position where it's not going to break down? So then we're considering things like shoulder health and elbow health and wrist health to make sure that those areas are ready to tolerate the amount of load we want to go through with them. So that could be a whole range of different things. Just make sure that the range, like we said at the start, make sure your range of motion is appropriate, that you're able to get through that entire stroke without putting your shoulder in an uncomfortable position or moving around into positions that aren't going to be beneficial. To ensure that we're not overloading tendons in particular, that could be the thing that tends to break down around the shoulder in particular. And again, probably providing you a little bit of kind of work through a greater range of motion, so we're not just spending the next 3 months doing just this shape, but our body can work through a greater range of motion, and we can build a bit of strength through a greater range of motion to maintain function and then structure through those areas.
When I've been talking to people about this challenge, a lot of people say to me, "Oh wow, you're going to be hench." There seems to be this misconception that because I'm hand cycling, all of a sudden I'm going to get this ripped, massive upper body. But that's just not the case. Right? It's fairly light load, high repetition, right? So I'm not going to be winning any Mr. Universe competitions anytime soon.
Up to a certain point, that will provide some hypertrophic stimulus for your body to grow muscle size. But like you say, yes, it's not going to be full-on bodybuilding style training that's going to transform you into Adonis anytime soon, unfortunately, Mike.
But, okay, I'm stopping now.
But yes, having a bigger muscle in this environment, it tends to be helpful, right? So you've got more to rely on. You see the track cyclists in particular, they've all got some pretty big legs, haven't they? You need that muscle mass, and the more muscle mass is available, the more force potential you have, and then it's how you use that is going to help. So yes, increasing your muscle size a bit will help, and that will happen naturally a little bit through the process. But if we went purely after getting as big and strong as we can in the muscles that we know you're going to be loading the most in cycling, we've got a new and novel challenge for you here. You're doing something new and we're adding more load of the same thing on top of it. we're asking for even more problems. So again, we're getting that balance right between going after the muscles we know are going to be key to your cycling action versus the bits that might be a bit more supportive. Get that balance right is going to be quite important, that we don't just give you more on top of more of load and then all of a sudden we're pretty sore in a pretty short space of time.
But also 3 months isn't that long, really,
No.
is it? It's not like I've got an amount of time to build bulk and big strength. So it is about surviving. I think it seems like an extreme word to use, but I want to finish the ride. I want to survive it. I don't want to have to drop out because I've overdone my training in the lead up.
Of course.
And what are we looking at with Gary? So Gary has been riding a handbike for many years, so this is his 12th ride. Can we focus on something that's more explosive focused or strength focused for Gary with his already good foundation?
Yes, so Gary's probably in a bit of a position where he can be afforded the opportunity to push a few things that you might not be. But like we talked about at the start, Gary mentioned his shoulder. That's going to be a key thing that we make sure we're looking after. And one of the options that Gary's got, whereas you talk about using your cycling alongside your hand cycling as an option to do further training, Gary's talking about doing things like SIA, talking about strength training, other options for training, so we're not just overloading the same action over and over again. So Gary can still get a fair amount of work through his heart and lungs, for example, off a SIA or an adapted rower or whatever it might be, that gives him an opportunity to challenge the aerobic side of things from a different perspective. So there'll be certain things like that we can look at. Yeah, muscle mass will be helpful, and something we can look at. We're also pushing things, and we talked at the start about central and peripheral factors, so your heart and lungs versus the muscles' use of the oxygen. And again, Gary's probably earned the right to do a little bit more of the muscles' ability to use the oxygen side of things. And that's where we get into things like high intensity interval training and those sort of things, where we're trying to build the physiology inside the muscles to be able to best utilise the oxygen that's provided to it.
Amazing. Off camera just now as well, we were talking about even further barriers and hurdles for Gary just getting places and things like that. Maybe it's worth just talk. I think it's quite interesting to just talk about these things. It's completely not S&C related, but you were just telling us about you missed a transfer at an airport because you were basically left sitting on an aeroplane far longer than you should have been.
Yeah, the daily barriers of using public transport as a person with a disability is just an ongoing issue. And I think coming back to your very original question, like what I think about you doing this challenge, I think it's a great opportunity not only for you to do this challenge into for your own personal growth and just to see how it goes. Because I think you will smash it. The daily barriers of using public transport as a person with a disability is just an ongoing issue. And I think coming back to your very original question, like what I think about you doing this challenge, I think it's a great opportunity not only for you to do this challenge into for your own personal growth and just to see how it goes. Because I think you will smash it, and I definitely think you'll complete it. But for you to highlight what the SIA is currently doing with our Travel with Confidence, all falls into this, because it's not just we're going to go out to France and cycle 200 miles from Toulouse to Bordeaux. It's all the stuff that goes around it. It's everything goes from preparation, from when I book my flights, booking special assistance, turning up to the airport even more time than someone without a disability would have to, about getting through the airport, getting on and off a plane, hoping that they're going to have the right equipment and the staff available. When I get to the destination, have they got the ambulance to take me off? I'm having to fly on certain days because I don't want to do the transfers, because the transfer does only have an hour window for me to come back on a Sunday, so I've got to stay in France for an extra day and enjoy Bordeaux and sample the I know it's terrible. But it was a genuine concern. It's like, well, there's no point me doing that hour window transfer because there's no chance of them getting me off the plane in time. So I'm just going to end up stuck in an airport for God knows how long. And again, these are just the day-to-day things that we have to take into consideration as well. But this challenge, I think, will highlight, because as much as you will be getting the bike and cycling, it'll give you that appreciation because you'll be with other people with spinal injuries, that you'll get to the end of each destination, you'll get out of it, but then you'll look over and you'll see me being assisted out. You'll go into the cafe stops and nip into the toilet. I might be in a bush if there isn't an accessible toilet, or I'm off to a different destination because That's where the accessible toilet is. When we get to the hotels, I'm in a completely separate room because I need the accessible room. I might not be able to drink in the same place because there might be steps, or I might be carried in and out. And again, this is going to give you that that wider view of the additional challenges that and I think that's great for highlighting this. So yeah, massive thank you for taking on this challenge, and I'm doing it for the Spinal Injuries Association as well.
I think on that note, it's probably a good time to wrap up. Well, I say wrap up, get in the gym and put some of this theory into practice. So
Yeah, just go ditch your woolly jumper, mate.
get the woolly jumper off and get sweaty, I suppose.
Let's do it.
Thank you very much, Steve.
My
This
pleasure.
has been amazing. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
You and I will have further conversations to highlight and bring more awareness to the table as much as possible. So, yeah, thanks, guys. This has been a really good chat.